So good to see all of you here again. How many of you were here yesterday? Okay, many. All right. Okay, so I'll try not to repeat myself again. Yeah. So today, I think we're talking about Buddhism, right? So I want to know, just get some feedback from some of you. I don't know, what is Buddhism for you, like in maybe one word? Like, can I get some thoughts? What is Buddhism for you? Yes?
Philosophy.
Philosophy? All right.
Freedom.
Freedom, yes. Compassion? Sorry?
Peace.
Sorry?
Peace.
Peace. And you?
It's essential of human culture.
All right. And psychology? Balance? Sanity?
Evolution.
Evolution?
A way of life.
A way of life. Wow. And what else? Home. Wow. Space. So nice, huh? All positive things, all beautiful things. And yes, it's all Buddhism, I guess, right? It is. It really is. Yeah. So Buddhism, Dharma, same thing, right? Do we agree? Dharma and Buddhism, is it the same thing?
No.
No? What is the difference?
Well, you could have Hindu Dharma or Christian Dharma.
Okay, so Dharma is what? Religion.
Well, it's a way of approaching life in a spiritual way, but I don't
That would be Dharma.
yeah, so you...
Okay. So we can debate now.
Go for it. I don't think they're one and the same, because a Christian Dharma is not going to be the same as a Buddhist Dharma.
But Dharma itself, by itself,
How are you defining Dharma?
the path to knowing your inner potential.
Okay, if you define it like that.
Maybe, I don't know. It's like Rome and many paths. They all lead to Rome somehow. Maybe. I'm sure many people would disagree with me, actually. But there's a lot of room for debate there. But yeah, I mean, Buddhism comes from Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings. And before Shakyamuni Buddha came to this planet, there were many other Buddhas, already enlightened before. So, before Buddhism, there already existed a Dharma that led you to enlightenment. So, therefore, it's not only like Buddhism, but the technique would be the same. So, we're talking about a technique, about an understanding of where we come from, of who we are, and the real true potential of our being. So, that's a little bit, maybe, kind of the beginning of anyways, so yeah, how about if we do a meditation? Like yesterday, we start off with a short meditation. A meditation on gratefulness, gratitude. So, just like yesterday, we're going to breathe in and breathe out. The breathing, not just from the nose, like the normal one we do, not that one, but the one from down here. From down the throat, right? So, one deep one, and then coming out the same, like that. It feels good, right? Really, immediately it relaxes you. So, first we're going to feel grateful for our heart that's beating constantly. At all times, the moment we were conceived, it started beating. Short time after we were conceived. And it has never stopped beating. And it will never stop beating until we pass away. At least this body. Until this body goes back to being stardust or worm food or whatever it is that it will become. Become part of everything again. So for now, we have this body with us, and it's our connection to the reality, to our experience of life. So we say thank you to the body that's always available for us. It's always there. Whether we harm it or we help it. Whether we take care of it or we don't. It's always there. And it tries the best it can, at its fullest potential at all times, to really take care of us and be available to us. Our lungs, it's the connection with life. It's like the temple of life. The air comes in through there. It's a connection with life. We breathe in the air that surrounds us all. The air is what connects us, apart from many other things, of course. We thank our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We thank all the food, all the generations that have, they have eaten for us to be here. All the moments that were crucial to the meeting of our parents, the meeting of our great-grandparents. The food we have eaten today and the food that we have eaten every day. The sacrifice of so many people that have given us the possibility to be here today with warm clothes, a warm roof, warm company. So our feet that help us to be balanced and to be able to walk, and so forth. This universe of a multi-organism, this universe of single-celled consciousnesses and sentient beings that form who we are. And they're always affected. All the organisms that are in our body, they're affected by our moods, by our emotions. We affect them constantly by our thoughts, by the vibration of our voice, by our actions. We thank them and we are aware of their existence and how easily we influence them, good or bad, positive and negative. We influence them constantly. Okay. So, how does that feel? Is that good? What do you think if we did this every day? Just 5 minutes every day. How would that feel? Maybe when we wake up in the morning, when we go to sleep at night. It would be good, right? Okay, let's get started now. Anyways, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a student, and I believe I'll be always a student until the day I die. And the day I die, I will still be learning about the process of death for the first time, at least in this body. So I believe we're all students on this planet, in this life. We're always learning. Who was it that said it? Was it Plato who said, "He who knows that he knows nothing is the wisest of them all"? Was that Plato? Socrates. See, I'm still learning. Yeah. So, and why did he say, if you think about it, when you know that you know nothing, it really opens you up to wanting to learn more, to absorb more information. So just that fact makes you wiser. So I think that's kind of what he meant in a way, right? When you're open to learning more. When you think, oh, I know enough to know, or I'm wise enough, or I'm wiser than you, or I'm old enough to know better than you, like this kind of thoughts, I think it makes you ignorant, and it actually limits your potential. Because there is no one who has more wisdom or less wisdom. It's just different wisdom, different experience. Because, we can have information, but the real wisdom comes through experience. You can read in a really thick book, you can read a really thick book about how chocolate tastes, right? But until you taste it, do you really understand how chocolate tastes? Difficult, right? So the real wisdom comes from experience. Information helps you to reach that experience. So that's why we're here, to learn a little bit of information. And I'm learning also, as I speak. So please correct me if I'm wrong or if anybody disagrees on what I say. I'm just sharing a little bit my thoughts, my experiences with you. So so basically I grew up in a monastery since a very young age. I was introduced to the Dharma when I was around 18 months old. So I wasn't 2 years yet when already I was introduced into the Dharma. I couldn't speak yet, but I was already surrounded by monks and nuns and enthroned and pujas and all these things. Pujas would be ceremonies in Sanskrit. Sanskrit, right? Or is it? Yeah, Sanskrit. Anyway, so I grew up in a monastery since I was 6. But already all my life I spent it in the Buddhist ambience, let's say, a Buddhist society. So for me, Buddhism was something like a normal thing, right? The information, what people used to talk about, like karma, reincarnation, samsara, all these concepts. And as it took growing in a monastery, well, that was the life, that was it, So in a monastery, the way the monks, at least, so we know what happened in Tibet. Originally, the Chinese, they came in 1959, and they took over Tibet. And many refugees had to escape Tibet in very difficult times, crossing through Tibet, which is a very harsh environment. And the way they went was to India. And at that time, Nehru was the president, and India had just received its independence from the English. So Nehru, they were very empathic towards the Tibetans, and they received them with open hands. They even went to war with China for a couple of days. It's not very well known, but it did happen. There was some kind of skirmishes in the borders, like that. So that's how much they wanted to help the Tibetan cause. So the Tibetans, they arrived in India at that time, and they brought with them Buddhism. And thanks to the Chinese invading Tibet, Buddhism started to expand into the West, through India, through the refugees. So in a way, we really have to thank the Chinese also for making Buddhism available, because Tibet was a very isolated country for a very long time. Have any of you seen 7 Years in Tibet? Yeah? And read the book? The book is good. Very good also. So the Tibetans were very isolated, did not allow any white people to come in. They were very protective about their land, and that was one of the reasons why they lost their land. They're not able to really, receive help in time. But anyways, so the philosophy, the way they studied philosophy in Tibet originally came also from Nalanda. Nalanda was a big monastery in India that existed a couple thousand years ago. And they also used philosophy, but maybe they didn't have the same style as the Tibetans, which when they debate, they clap their hands. Have you seen monks debating? They jump up and down and they stamp their foot, and every time they make a question, they do like that, they clap their hand. And that means like, pay attention. Are you ready to answer as fast as you can? Because you really have to be fast. It's all about wits. It's all about, And if you're not able to answer fast, and if you make a mistake because you are under pressure, so then they make fun of you. There's this game of, it's actually, it's very enjoyable, the monks when they debate. You can see them, they have so much fun. And they get really, pumped up, which is amazing, It's a completely different way of learning, which in the West, we don't really have that so much. Originally, it started in Nalanda, in India. And they had about 20,000 monks living at one time in Nalanda. It was a huge monastery. And of course, everything was in Sanskrit. So that culture of debate, they would debate more like just speaking. They would sit down and speak. They didn't have that clapping, jumping up and down kind of culture. But the Tibetans, they took that. So when they went back to India, when the philosophy, the Buddhist philosophy went back to India, they brought the debate. And then, so that culture, the three main monasteries in Tibet that existed at the time was Drepung, Ganden, and Sera. So Drepung also had about 20,000 monks. And Sera must have had about maybe 10, 15,000. All of them together, there are about maybe 30,000 at least monks in the 3 monasteries. So all 3 monasteries were established in India. And Sarah today has about between 5,000 to 6,000 monks living and studying there. And they are continuously coming up with the degrees. They call it the Geshe degree. It's like the doctorate, when you get the PhD. And it takes about 15 to 20 years to get the PhD in Tibetan Buddhist philosophy studies in the monastery. So that's where I grew up. And that's very interesting, the way they do it, because so in Tibetan you have 3 types of Tibetan. You have the normal colloquial Tibetan, which can also be kind of slangish. Then you have the more honorific type of Tibetan, which is very different. You use different words. And then you have the sacred Tibetan, the high Tibetan. So that's what they use in texts. Like most of the times when His Holiness gives teachings in Tibetan, he uses that type of Tibetan. And so that Tibetan is a completely, almost a new language. I mean, there's basic terms, but most of them are all very intense. Like one word can mean so many things. And to understand that one word that they use is so many different connotations and understandings and ways of explaining it. And perspective, of course. So there's a lot of debate. And maybe there can be 5 to 10 words for the same meaning in that level, in the sacred Tibetan. Or so I call it the sacred Tibetan, or I don't know. Anybody knows any name for that? Other names? Sorry? Classical, maybe? Yeah? The text, the Tibetan they use for the text, for the Dharma text, for the, So anyways, so for example, for when we were young kids in the monastery growing up, my class, we had about 250 monks studying together. So the routine would be in the morning you would go, you would memorize. It's all about memorizing. So you had to, each class, every year you had a text. And you're supposed to memorize the whole text by memory. And be able to recite it. And if you open a page and actually those are the exams. When you go to the exam at the end of the year, you give the text to the monk, and then he will open it randomly, start reading at one point, and then you have to recite maybe the next couple sentences, and he'll be like, okay. Then he maybe opens it again randomly, like that. So that's how you show that you know the whole text by memory. And if you can't, then okay, sorry, you don't have this text, so they don't write it down, so you don't get credit for memorizing that text. And some monks, when they went to do the exam, they would have to carry the books in wheelbarrows. Can you believe that? Those are like the top monks of the class. They'll memorize all these texts. So anyways, I wasn't those. I had my one text, and I would still be struggling with it and sweating when I gave it off. So that's the routine. So you would wake up maybe around 5:30 a.m. You'd memorize for an hour and a half, maybe 1 page or half a page. If you're lucky, maybe 2 pages. Some monks could memorize up to 3-4 pages a day in the morning when your mind is fresh. And then after that, so you memorize that page, which is kind of the page that you're going to study that day. And you obviously don't understand anything because it's the sacred Tibetan. And then you through the years, you start to understand more and more because you start learning what the words mean and what they represent. And so the first years, basically the debate goes on, it's about like colors and shapes. And then the next year you study about consciousness, about cause and effect. And then you slowly learn about, like, for example, different levels of realization and so forth. And it keeps getting more and more complicated and more complex and deeper. So you go to the class. So in the monastery there's many already doctors or PhD holders, geshes we call them. And so you can choose which geshe you want to go to study with. And once you choose him, he's your teacher for life. So normally monks would have 2 teachers minimum, to have 2 different perspectives of the same philosophy. So then you go with the page that you've memorized, with your class. So maybe to that teacher about maybe 15, 20, 30, depending on how popular that teacher is. My teacher, there will be maybe 30 monks going to the class together. So you go to the teacher, and then he will explain to you what that page means, step by step. And he will give you, while he's explaining it, he'll make you come up with so many doubts and questions. Like you're like, oh. So then already you're like, you want to go immediately, you want to go to the debate courtyard to debate about it with your classmates. So that's after the hour of teaching from the teacher, and you understand that page. Of course, you have it memorized, so it's very easy. You can debate very easy about everything. Then you go to the courtyard, and then you debate. So every day there will be about 3 to 5 hours of debate daily, in the morning and in the afternoon. So some monks would stay, maybe the second session of debate starts around 6, so you would have dinner at 5, 6 in the afternoon. And then normally, like between one session and another, you have prayers, so you have about 1 hour of prayers. And then after that, the monks debate again. And then around 8, 9, maybe 10, if you're a good student, maybe you can go back home at 10, 10:30. And then you have to recite everything you memorized before. So that can take another hour, 2 hours, depending on how much you have memorized. Like in total, like in that year, to keep it fresh. Some monks would stay up to 12 at night and then go back and recite everything. So some of them would go to sleep at 2, wake up at 5:30, depending on how hard students they were, like how pushy. And I remember I would probably maybe go early, like by 10 o'clock I'll be like, okay, I want to go home now. I have to recite, I want to go to sleep early. But you would hear them from my house, you could still hear the claps. Some of my classmates, their hands were completely, sometimes bleeding really hard, Like actually, while they're debating, they would like splash blood, like blood would like come up. And that was supposed to be very good, that's like, oh, he's very, like you touch the hand, oh, you're a good debater. So they would check, the older senior monks will be like, oh, how are you doing? Oh. And they'll look at your hand, oh, it's very smooth, huh? Not debating very much lately. Yeah. So that's how they learned the philosophy, and basically learning was through doubts. You'd make the other person doubt what they say. So for example, everything starts with the base. So for one person sits down and the other one debates. So the person who's sitting down has to answer yes or no, and sometimes they can answer some more complicated answers, but normally it's yes or no. So then you start with the base, and the objective of the debate is to make the person to go back on that base, to actually have to say, yes, okay, I'm wrong. So once you start on the base, and you can go branch out in different directions, but always the objective is to come back and to show them that they're wrong. And the other one is to demonstrate that they're right. So you can create all these doubts, you put all kinds of ideas, on the table, and you debate on it. And it's so interesting, because that's how Buddha's teaching started off. When Buddha Shakyamuni, around 2,500 years ago, is that correct? A bit more, 2,600?
I think there's doubts, but yeah.
Doubts? Okay, well, around about. Long time ago. Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha, before his teachings, he would say, you have to treat my teachings like an alchemist or like a smith, like a goldsmith treats gold. So before he takes the metal, he treats it. So he heats it up, he burns it, he scratches it. He really, checks it deeply to see whether it is gold or not and how pure it is. And once he's seen that it really is gold, then he says, oh, this is gold and it's a precious metal. So he said the teachings, his Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings have to be treated like a smith treats gold. Just because he said it doesn't mean, oh, it's true. Or you have to take it as your truth or your path. You really have to check it and have doubts and question it. That's what he said. So that is how philosophy, Tibetan Buddhist philosophy works. It's like everything is checked. And the more doubts, the better, because that helps you to really understand how you can understand it. And of course, there's many different schools, and Buddha taught many different ways for different people, because there's not one path for everybody. Everybody has to find their own path, and what they identify with, and what attracts them also, and what works for them. So it's very interesting, you know, it's a huge variety. And of course, I'm just a student, so I'm still learning, and I will always be learning, and hopefully all of you too. And so it's very interesting what we have today, you know. We have the information of Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha, who was enlightened in that same lifetime. I mean, they say he was already enlightened before, and he came back as a normal human being to show the process of the potential of the human being. And through that process, he after taught the teachings. So we still have that information today, fresh, you know, passed on through generations. And it's available, thanks to many organizations and many teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and many teachers before him who have been teaching Buddhism and Dharma for a very long time. So we really have to thank them very, very strongly. And tradition also. And the Tibetans, and the Indians, and it just goes on and on and on. But the thing is that it's here today, and it's available. I'm not a teacher. I'm just giving a small introduction to the potential and the capacity of what Buddhism can actually give to you and help you in your life. So, yeah. So most people are familiar with the concept of samsara. Who doesn't know samsara or understand what samsara is? Oh, you don't? Okay, I don't know, maybe different people have different perspectives of samsara, understandings. I'll just give you at least my understanding of what samsara is. Samsara would be a little bit like the cycle of life and death, right? The cycle of attachment. It's a little bit like the trap for monkeys that we were talking about yesterday. The hunters in India, the way they trap the monkeys is they have coconuts with a hole in it and a candy inside. And the monkeys put their hand inside, grab the candy, and while they have their hand as a fist, they can't take their hands out. So they can't escape, they can't climb on the trees. When the hunters come to capture them, even though they're afraid for their life, they still hold on to the candies. Even though if they let go, they can be free and escape. So it's a little bit like that. Samsara, we are trapped in samsara because we are holding so much onto attachment. We're so attached. And attachment basically almost comes from fear. Fear of losing. Fear of change maybe. Fear of the unknown. All these different types of fear. And I mean, in Star Wars it talks about it, right? The fear leads to attachment. Attachment leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Or something like that. And then hate takes you to the dark side. And Buddhism also is similar, they talk about that too. So as long as we are stuck in samsara, we cannot be free from suffering. From the cycle of suffering, of rebirth. You know, and we always have, it's a danger, you know, because sometimes if we don't have the right motivation, we can go backwards, de-evolve. You know, so it's very important to keep the right motivation. When I say de-evolve, it means going back. So like, because we are animals of habit. We're beings of habit. Habit is very important for us. And maybe some of you don't believe in reincarnation, but it's very clear that some habits come from past lives. You know, you can see clearly some babies, for example, they can be very kind to animals at a very young age, and some of them maybe systematically are killing ants. I don't know. It depends, of course. It doesn't necessarily mean that it comes from a habit from past life, but there's a difference between one baby and another. I don't know which it is. Of course, we can't know, but there are theories. And one of the theories is because of the habits from past lives, the patterns that we created. So the more we create a habit, in science today they call it neural pathways in our brain. So the more we create these habits, the easier it is to go through those habits. For example, like they do the experiments with the guinea pig in a maze, and they put the meal or the candy or whatever, the cookie, at one side of the maze. They make the guinea pig search for the path to get there. The first time it tries many different ways to eventually get there. The second time it's faster. By the third time, you get really fast because it already knows how to get there easily. So every time it takes shorter period of time to get to its objective. So that's a little bit how the brain works. Once we get the habit, it's easier, and then we're more comfortable with that. So we create that habit. And that also can be very dangerous. Because if we create a negative habit, then every time it's easier to do negative things, to go into that pattern. And even sometimes we may even enjoy doing negative things. When I say negative, there are many different ways or aspects to see it, but mainly what we can all understand is to do things which we wouldn't enjoy other people to do to us. For example, harsh words or any action or even thoughts, because sometimes thoughts can really affect people. If you look in this room, everything started with a thought. Most of the things, apart from the 4 elements, right? We were talking yesterday. That's how powerful the thoughts are. Everything you see that's been, manipulated by men and women has been started with a thought. So it has an immense power, even though we may not see it or believe it immediately. So that's why it's very important to also see and recognize what is positive, what is negative. So what you don't want other people to do to you, why would you do that to some other people? That's kind of the first basic thing about negative. Of course, it gets much more complicated than that. But that would be like the basic. Right? So, and we know also as a fact that as long as we are cherishing ourselves, the self-cherishing mind of me, I want this, I want that for my happiness, which is not real happiness because it's temporary. We want temporary happiness and we don't want temporary suffering. We run away from that and we want temporary happiness, but we don't recognize that they're both temporary. And we also don't recognize that the more we strive and work for receiving something for us or working for us, the result is going to be suffering. Almost always. Unless the real motivation is there. If the motivation of helping other people, of benefiting other people is there, then whatever action we do, it will bring happiness if we keep that motivation. Of course, between the motivation and the action, many things can happen, right? Not many people are sometimes, nice. Some people can be very mean. And that's where also forgiveness comes in. If we don't forgive the other person, then we are carrying their burden. We are carrying their problem. If somebody does something mean to us and we don't forgive them, we're carrying their problem with us by not forgiving. And also very important to forgive ourselves. So it goes 2 ways. We always have to forgive the other people and ourselves. Also to help the other person to be able to move on. Like when somebody steals something from you, you lose something. Maybe you're like, oh no, you want them to suffer because they stole something from you. You feel really unhappy. Like you lost something that you really liked or you really loved or whatever it is. You're so attached to it. You can't live without it. Even though before you had it, you were happy. Or not unhappy at least. The moment you lost it, suddenly you're super unhappy. Even though you started without it and it was fine. So, in those cases, when somebody steals something from you, just give it away. Say, oh, I offer it to that person. May he enjoy it. May he find good use for it. And then you release yourself from a weight. For example, right? So all these things are part of Dharma, of Buddhism. These are all aspects of Buddhism in everyday life, daily life. Because many people may think, religion, Buddhism, Dharma, it's about reading a book. It's about having understanding. It's about going to teachings, doing meditation, retreats, receiving initiations. Sure, that's one part of it. But the actual main part, the actual, in Tibetan we say dodo, the actual, what do you call it? Sorry?
Nucleus.
Yeah, the nucleus. Essence, exactly. The actual essence would be your daily life. How you put it in practice. How you relate to other people. How you think, how you speak, how you act. The body, speech, and mind. The mind thinks something, the speech follows that, and then the body follows it through the frequency. Right? So the vibration of your speech. And it's very subtle, we don't see it, but it's happening all the time. A thought affects any people around you. It creates, even our heart pumping is creating a frequency. And our mood, our motivation, everything affects it. So that's why it's so important to be aware of our thoughts. Thoughts come and go, just like clouds. Boom, boom. You can't really grab them. They're completely ephemeral. But we take thoughts so seriously. We believe in them so strongly. Sometimes we can't even sleep because of our thoughts. They torture us so much. Isn't that crazy how we even identify ourselves with our thoughts? Even though the thoughts are just a tool. They're just a tool. But we actually believe the thoughts is us. I am my thoughts. I am my body. Are we our body? Are we our thoughts? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think if you look for yourself, do you find yourself? Where are you? You're a composition. Your body is a composition. Your thoughts are just part of who you are, your being. Right? When you actually don't think, when you calm down the thoughts, then you start to hear an inner voice that's much stronger than the thoughts. And it doesn't use words. Maybe it uses emotions. It uses feelings. And sometimes not even that. So, anyways, yeah. So it's very important, there's different types of meditation. Some meditations is to calm your mind, relax, put your mind to work, put the monkey mind to work by focusing your breathing in, out. Sometimes it's good to just let the mind just do its thing. You just think. And you just sit down and observe how crazy your mind is, how it comes and goes and has these images and boom, 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 all the time, da, 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 da. And these days, the new generation, I can't imagine how it's going to be because, the system, society really bombards us with so much entertainment and distractions. Somehow it really doesn't want us to be focused in our real essence, who we are. We are all full of distractions all the time. There's always something to do to forget us. People get bored otherwise. Sometimes they just, to be attentive to something 5 minutes is difficult. You need to, even a short documentary or something, if it's longer than maybe 20 minutes, and it's not interesting anymore. We tend to want to, be bombarded by things, by images, by sounds, even the movies today, compared to the movies maybe in the 90s, so different. Back in the days, when I say days, maybe a couple 100 years, maybe 500, 600, I don't know, before the Industrial Revolution, people as entertainment, they used to sit around the fire and tell stories. When I grew up, that was the case. I grew up in India. When I arrived there, we didn't have many of the, the things that we have today, the benefits or the enjoyments or the comfort zone. It was very different. We used to use firewood to cook. We didn't really have much electricity. The electricity would just, maybe 3 hours a day we would have electricity. We didn't have telephones. Obviously we didn't have internet. And I remember as a kid, one of the entertainments we had would be go out at night, far from the house. As kids we'd go around, we'd sit in a circle and talk about ghost stories. And see how we could scare the other person the most. Sometimes we'd even invent them and say, no, it's true, it's true. That those believe it, and then suddenly the one would be like, oh, I saw something moving, and everybody would, hug each other, come together, oh my God. Then you couldn't even go back home because you'd be scared to move. It'd be so you actually get really pumped up, you get this adrenaline rush. And I remember my younger brother, he would invent so many times, I saw an old lady walking by, we can't see it, I saw her. Later he confessed he invented it, much later on. I also confessed I invented some ghost stories. And my friends were like, really? Oh wow, I really believed it was true. I even had nightmares from that story. I'm like, okay. Yeah. The good old times, right? Yeah, now these days, I mean, you just swiping, looking at this, looking at TV, boom, 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 boom. Images, they kind of, the creativity. I mean, the education system somehow has, in a way, I mean, I don't like to say it, but, in Spanish we have certain expressions which are a little bit exaggerated, but, not all the education system, but like the conventional one, let's say, it creates donkeys and sheep, not thinking, just following the crowd, the masses. And sometimes the education system makes us not question, makes us maybe be afraid of making mistakes, so it kind of, pushes down the creativity. Things like that, and it teaches us how to work, but it doesn't really teach us how to live, which is, I mean, we should know how to live before we know how to work. Because otherwise, what's the point, Work, and then you don't know how to live, so there's something missing, right? Anyways, that was a conversation for yesterday. Yeah. So that's why we really have to be aware of our thoughts. It's very important. That's one of the meditations, is to just let the thoughts pass. Boom. Like the clouds in the sky. You just observe how the clouds come and go. It's like sitting next to a river and watching the water pass by and listening to the sound. Just observing. So that's really interesting. That's very basic meditation. Of course, then you have the other meditations, which is like calming the mind, turning off the mind, and really focusing. Sometimes focusing on an image, focusing on your breath, or not focusing. I like to use the metaphor of being a meteorite in the middle of the universe, in the space. We don't have the capacity to think, so we can't think, Oh, I'm just a stone, I can't think. So every time something comes, oh, no, you're stone, you're floating in space. How can you think? Otherwise, you can just use like, the cloths in the theater, in the opera, they close, black cloths. So you just, the curtains. So every time, the images come, you just close it up. Or like push it by like that, boom, clear. And it's possible, like if you can stop thinking for 1 second, you can stop thinking for 10 seconds. You can do it for 1 minute. If you do it for 10 minutes, you've already reached a realization. That is already a realization. So it's very important, to be able to calm your mind, to be able to calm yourself, to be present. Because in today, especially like living in the city, it's hard, And we get a lot of stress. We get tension, we get stress. We have responsibilities, we have pressure, so if we are able to really just calm down, like, I like to do this breathing like, and that really feels good somehow. You try it. Breathe in. Doesn't it feel so good? I love it. A friend of mine, he was doing it all the time, like every day. He'd be like, and I'm like, wow, you're really doing a lot. Then he was like, yeah, you should try it. And I started trying it. It was like, wow, I almost got addicted to that, Every time I would start thinking or get stressed, I would just be like, and I'd be like, wow, it feels so good. Yeah, so it's good, especially like in stressful situations, you do that. Just in 1 second, boom, you just release a lot of tension. And you really realize, because sometimes we just shut ourselves in our small mind, thinking, like, oh, poor me, it's the end of the world, or this is happening to me, and like, from a little bit of suffering, we create huge suffering, when we don't really realize that some people are like afraid for their life, or they don't have food to eat, or they lost family members, or they're sleeping in the street with so much cold, the temperatures are so low. Or maybe even so hot. In India, in some places, people die from the heat. So we really, we have to be aware of these things, and especially when we think, we have this thinking of, oh, poor me, I'm suffering so much, blah, 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 blah. I mean, yes, of course, we do suffer, but it is temporary suffering, and if we can recognize it, and maybe not focus so much on it, and maybe overvalue more the positiveness and the negativeness, then maybe we can really switch it around and, be more happy, be more calm, more harmonious inside, with the motivation to also help other people to be like that too. You know? If instead of cherishing ourselves, we start to cherish other people. We start to think about the person next to us before we think of ourselves. You know, like when we're through our daily life, you know, ask people, like the people we interact with, how are you today? Smile to them. Even if they don't smile back, smile to them. It's nice. It's a nice feeling. His Holiness was making the joke in the Kala Chakra. You know, it's nice to smile, and sometimes people don't smile back. They're really serious. So maybe you're smiling, and they're not smiling, so you also make a serious face, you know. And then maybe they will smile. So like that, you do like that, and they're like, oh. I thought it was so funny, the way he did it, you know, the expression he did was just... There's a story, you know, a real story. I don't know where it happened. I think maybe it happened in China, somewhere like that. In a butcher, I told this story yesterday, but I'm going to repeat it for the people who weren't here yesterday. Somebody got trapped in a freezer in a big factory, a meat factory. Somehow, at the end of the day, he got trapped, and he couldn't get out. So when he was already gave up, he was okay, I'm going to die now for sure. Suddenly, somebody opened the door, and it was a guard. Everybody had left, but the guard somehow came back and opened the door. So he said, wow, how did you know I was here? And he said, well, out of everybody that comes in the morning, leaves, you're the only person who says good morning when you come, and you're the only person who says good night when you leave. So I was waiting for my good night, and I didn't get it, and I knew you were here. So I started to look for you. So somehow that saved his life, you know. I mean, that's maybe an exaggerated example, but, you know, saying hello and good morning can save your life. Some situations, ironically. And it can change people's lives. I mean, who knows what the other person is passing through? They could be really depressed. Maybe they're even suicidal. And just the fact that you smile to them, that you recognize them, that you ask them, how are you? When did your shift start? How many hours do you got left? How are you doing today? Something like that can really make them feel a sense of belonging. You know, sense that, you know, someone appreciates them, that they exist. You know, many places, like for me, one time it happened to me, really surprised me in Milano. I was in the lift. And, you know, Milan, a big city, people are like all the time stressed, you know, like going in the world, they don't really, eye contact sometimes is weird, you know, like to make eye contact, it's like, oh, why are you making eye contact? But it's nice to make eye contact, and it's really beautiful. Anyways, I was in a lift, and there was this lady, and I said, good morning, and she looked at me like really offended, you know, like, who are you? Like, she actually asked me, who are you? Excuse me, do I know you? That's what she said. And I'm like, no, I just was saying good morning, like as if I did something wrong. And I was supposed to feel bad or something. And I'm like, I just said sorry, and I'm just saying good morning. She's like, oh, like really like. And normally, what we would feel would be like, oh, what a mean person, or like, you know, whatever it is. We have these negative thoughts. But of course, the first thing you should think would be like, wow, she must really be suffering in order to act like that. You know, so the first thing you should have is compassion. Like for Trump, you know. Should have compassion for Trump. Very important. You know, he must. I think he suffers a lot, and I'm sure he's creating the cause to suffer much more. So even though I'm sure his motivation may be a good one, to help people, apart from maybe getting richer, I don't know.
Help the American.
I help the American people to get richer. But no, I'm sure genuinely deep down inside, I'm sure his motivation is good. But the way he does it is also through ignorance, because that's how it is. Capitalism works like that. Capitalism works on people's insatisfaction. If you live the moment, you would always be satisfied with what you got, unless you have to survive. Right? What do we need to survive is food, clothing, to be protected by the warm from the weather, company, right? And to be safe. All of these things, to have a roof, basic things we want. But more than that, do we really need it? Does it really make us happy? Like the rich people, maybe they have a boat, a yacht, they have a private jet. Then what they want? They want an island. Then they want a country, like Trump. And then after that, what? They want the world. And maybe they're still not happy. And still, maybe they take sleeping pills when they go to sleep. And when they wake up, maybe they take Prozac, antidepressant. I'm sure, like... I don't know, but that's the thing. The more you look for happiness outside, the more you're, really, distancing yourself from the real source of happiness, which is inside. So when you know that, then you can really start walking towards happiness, or at least non-unhappiness, which is easier to achieve. So when you look inside, when you understand who you are, your inner nature, your potential, in Buddhism it says the potential of a Buddha. We all have the same potential. When you start to understand that, then you can really start finding the true happiness, which comes from wanting to benefit other people, trying to help other people, from actually, being happy for other people's happiness. So that's where the real happiness is. That's where your suffering starts becoming less, and that's when your happiness starts becoming more. And if we all knew that from a young age, it would really create the cause for a much happier world. Some people may call it a utopia. I don't know, I think it can really exist. Because our inner nature, our true essence is that. It's pure empathy, pure love. We're just influenced by society and the system, slowly. I mean, even from when we were cavemen, we would already be fighting for the driest piece of wood, the less humid cave, the most fresh piece of meat. So, we already would fight for things that simple. At that time, they're really important. Now we're fighting for oil, coal. What is it? It's energy, which represents death. I mean, in a way, it's just fossil fuel. It's animals and vegetation that died and got stuck for millions of years. And now we're burning it, and we're creating asthma in our lungs. We're making oil spills that are killing animals. Plastic comes from oil, all these things that are really deteriorating our life and our health, the quality of our life, the quality of the ecosystem, all because we need the energy, so we're using this representation of death as energy, and we're fighting for it, we're killing people for it. I mean, how many wars have been fought? All the wars have been for gaining some kind of power or wealth or influence. Every single war. No wars were actually fought for peace. How can you actually fight a war for peace? It's completely ridiculous. But that's how it has been. The humans, for some reason, they really believe that, they say killing a human is illegal and it's bad, but then the wars happen and millions of people get killed, and that's okay. That's patriotic. Come on. Anyways, so that's another story. So we're here to help change that. And how do we do it? By starting with ourselves. If we plant the seed in ourselves, then we can really influence everybody else. We have to start with ourselves. We have to start loving ourselves and understanding the true nature of who we are. And then we can really affect the collective memory. Can really affect the people surrounding us. That's very important, very important. Anyways, I just got started actually. I'm just right beyond my first note. And it's already been 1 hour. I don't know, maybe we should do some pee-pee break or something in a short while. What do you think? And then come back again? No? No? No, but it's good sometimes to disconnect and then come back again. I don't know, maybe everybody wouldn't come back, but that's okay. That's up to you. But yeah, I'll go maybe another, I don't know, I'll see. I'll try to go through a couple more notes.
So you can always come back and do the other points on other occasions as well.
Yeah, that too.
Please.
Yeah. But I think it's good to think about all these things, It's very important. They're basic qualities. Because today, the values are very upside down, People we really switch our values so much, Today the values are, I don't know, we have different values from the real, true values. So, I don't know, for example, right now, what would give me one value that really is important in your life? Anything. Just one word. Let's see.
Not to harm others.
Not to harm others. What else? What value? Respect, faith, faithful. What else? Sorry? Trust, hope. What else? Kindness, very good. Love, of course. Sorry? Happiness, peace, patience, gratitude, sharing, friendship, loyalty. Yeah. So many real values that really count in life. But in life, I mean, if you look in politics, for example, what are their values that they really, support and make really important? What would it be? Power, wealth, influence, those things, right? Land, resources. Are those real values? I don't know. I mean, is it really necessary to really? I mean, there's a statistics that says if we took 1/3 of the food that's thrown from the first world countries, it actually is thrown. If we took 1/3 of that food, we could feed the whole planet that doesn't have enough food to eat. How crazy is that? And 2/3 would still be thrown. Something's wrong. I don't know. And we know that, but we think we cannot do anything. We actually limit ourselves to thinking, it's been like that, we have no power. But we do. As individuals, we do, by starting with ourselves. If we actually start to investigate and find our true potential, we can really influence and change the world. We can. And we have the tools here. We have Buddhism. We have the philosophy, the lifestyle, the true essence, and the meaning of who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. So, yes, of course.
I'm just thinking.
Do you want the mic? Because the thing is being recorded.
Thank you. I think just about everybody in this room would agree with the way you've told us these things tonight, and particularly at these times how important it is to have this feeling of empathy and kindness towards all beings. And of course the world is coming to a bit of a crunch at the moment. And particularly at the Jamyang Center, we're thinking about how we can make the Dharma available to more people, and particularly to the younger generations, people of your age and maybe a bit younger, how we can make this much more available. We feel that people in this age group are ready to hear the Dharma, but how do we get it across? It may not be in the more traditional way that we ourselves have been taught. Yeah. I wondered if you had any comment to make on that.
I mean, we'll have to find ways of identification, how people can identify with that, to make it more attractive. Like maybe movies, music, maybe dancing, I don't know. There's many different ways that actually can. Music, I really like music. Many times, like when I'm stressed, I listen to music and I get so inspired. I really do, like just from the words, from the lyrics. Yeah. I wanted to tell some stories actually, because I love stories. I think stories are really inspiring. Basically, I want to just point out some very important qualities or values. I mean, of course, sharing. What's the point of life if we can't share? I mean, you can't really enjoy unless you share. When you share, that's when you really enjoy. If you have something and you can't share it, it's just for you. I don't know. I mean, not the way the system wants us to share, by showing off, by creating envy or trying to create the appearance that we are happy. Not that kind of sharing. The actual genuine sharing, where we want to share our joy, when we want to share our good qualities. And that's so important. If we were really actually humble, patient, respectful, and compassionate, we wouldn't really suffer that much. We would actually have a very happy life, or not unhappy life. That's for sure. I can guarantee you. I'll sign a paper, and if it's not true, you can come back and sue me. No, I'm just joking. Don't take it too seriously. No, but humility is very interesting. There's a story that they told me today. about this practitioner, meditator in Tibet. And he was a great practitioner, a great meditator, but he was really proud. He really thought of himself as somebody really important. So he really thought he was very realized. He liked to show off a lot. And he was a genuine practitioner. He really was. I mean, almost, because he had pride and he had, he lacked humility. So there's many things that have to, be part of your practice. And you can be intellectual, but you have to put in practice. You can have the wisdom, but without the method, then you're only halfway there. And also in Buddhism, even if you don't have the wisdom, just with compassion, you can really go a very long way. Almost maybe sometimes enlightenment, just with the compassion. So wisdom and compassion together, they're very powerful tools. Anyways, this practitioner, he found out about there was another meditator somewhere in the valley, in the mountains. And that meditator, he was very famous. So he was like, oh, why am I not so famous? I need to know the secret of this meditator. I'm going to go to visit him. So he went to visit the meditator. And he offered him like tea and like things, like different things, fruits, and had a conversation with him. The meditator was very humble. And then he asked him, by the way, what is your secret of your realizations? How come you're so famous? What is the secret of your fame? The meditator said, oh, I have this mantra that I recite every day since a very long time. And he's like, oh, wow, can you tell me that mantra? He got really excited, He said, oh, if I know that mantra, then I'm going to become the most realized and the most famous, much more famous than him, obviously, right? So he got really excited. Oh, can you tell me that mantra? So the meditator told him the mantra, and he was like, oh, but that mantra is wrong. You're saying it the wrong way. So the meditator said, oh, really? So can you tell me how it is the right way? He said, oh, no, this is the right way. So he explained to him how to recite the mantra the right way. So the meditator was like, oh, thank you, that's really, really nice of you. So he started to recite it the right way. So the first meditator, the proud meditator, he left, and he was like, okay, I have nothing to learn from him. I actually taught him something. So he's like, by now I must be this. It shows me that I'm the greatest, and I'm so happy I saw him, because I really was able to help him, if it were not for me, he would be still doing the mantra wrong, oh, poor guy, me, important me. So as he crossed the ferry, he had to cross the river, and he crossed the ferry, and while he was crossing, halfway through, suddenly he saw this meditator come, and he was running on the water. He came running on the water. Boom, boom, boom. Then he got to the ferry, jumped on the ferry, and he's like, oh, by the way, I forgot the right way to say the mantra. Can you repeat it to me? And the proud meditator, he was completely in shock. He was like, wow, somebody that I thought and judged so much to be so inferior to me is actually running on water. He was completely shocked. So while he was shaking, he was like, he told him how to say the mantra in the right way, right? And the humble meditator said, oh, thank you. And he walked slowly, reciting the mantra to himself the right way. He walked on the water, back to the same shore. So I think that's a great story on humility, and how many times we judge people without really knowing them or knowing what they've gone through. We really have to, we don't really have the right to judge anyone. We don't really know what they've gone through. We don't even know ourselves. We don't know how we are going to react in certain situations tomorrow. Do we? We don't know when something is going to happen. Certain things that happen, we may react one way or another, but until it happens, we don't know actually really how we're going to react. So we don't even know ourselves. How can we even think that we know other people in order to judge them? But we do. We judge them a lot. And we like to criticize because it kind of makes us forget about our own defects. Makes it, oh, if we point the finger to other people, oh, it's their fault. That person did this to me. But you didn't lose patience because of the other person. You lost patience with yourself. If you're patient with yourself, you will never lose patience. So it's very easy to blame others for your problems. But the actual true thing is you're the captain of your boat. And you're responsible for your problems because you're the one who chooses to see it that way. For me, in Buddhism, one of the first steps would be how to adapt positively to any situation. That for me is a basic step in Buddhism. If you can actually adapt positively to any situation, then already you're taking the first step into Buddhism. That's very interesting. Yeah. So for example, the philosophy or religion or spiritualism or Dharma or Buddhism is not so much about the truth. Nobody can say, oh look, I found the truth, here, take it. This may be my truth. It can be the way I see it. It may be my path. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's your path. You have to find your own path. You have to find your own truth, what you identify with. So the guru, the teacher, or like the method, the information, the wisdom, is not that. That is not the truth. That helps you to find the truth. It's like being in a dark forest, completely dark forest. You're trying to get out of the forest. And then suddenly there's a full moon, comes out, and thanks to the light of the moon, you're able to, see better to get out of the forest. But you're not going to the moon. You're trying to get out of the forest. So you're not, the objective is not, the philosophy or the wisdom or the teacher. The objective is to really understand yourself and see where you come from and where you're going and who you are and what your real potential is. That is where we're really going. So don't distance yourself from who you are. Actually look inside. Many people make that mistake. Many people, So it's very important to incorporate Buddhism, the philosophy, in our daily life. Make it a habit, create a pattern of, cherishing other people and not giving so much importance to ourselves. I mean, we have to use sometimes the ego in order to improve in a positive way, saying, me, I want to improve, I want to learn in order to really be able to help and share that with other people. So that kind of motivation is good. We use the ego for a good purpose. Same way we put the mind to work for a good purpose. If we let it go, thinking negative thoughts, being pessimistic, it's just going to bring suffering. It's not, don't put ourselves down, don't limit ourselves, ourselves. We should not limit ourselves. We have infinite potential. We have amazing potential. Like another story was, for example, there was a meditator in Tibet also. He was a great meditator, great practitioner. And so there was one time, there was a famine in the village, in the area, a big famine. So all the people, they really needed food. And there was this meditator who had really hoarded all this food, accumulated a lot of food to last for maybe a year or 2 years. Because he was meditating by himself in the cave, isolated completely. So the villagers had decided to visit him, to ask him for some food. And then when they went to see him, he was like, no, I need this food for myself, for my practice. I mean, he was genuine, really good practitioner. But somehow he took it too important, like it was too important for him to really keep that food for his practice. So the villagers, they kind of did a mutiny, they killed him and stole all the food. So when he died in great anger and resentment, so he became a ghost. Even though his practice was pure and he was a really good practitioner. So in one moment, boom, So it's very important to really check ourselves and our motivation all the time. Just because we've been Buddhists for 30 years doesn't mean maybe we're actually good people. We may smile to our friends, but maybe we talk harshly to the waiter. Maybe we expect good service, and when they don't, we're But actually, poor person, maybe they're having a hard time. Who knows what they're going through? And we expect the service to be like that because we're paying that amount, so that's how it should be. And so we don't even see the person. But then with our friend, we're like, oh yeah, I'm a real Buddhist, no, really. I've been to many initiations. I did this retreat, such and that retreat. I've read this book and that book. Come on, be realistic. The real Dharma, the real Buddhism is not about what you read or what you do. I mean, what you practice, like in that way, but the real Dharma is how you move in life, how you relate to people, how you share your own being. You know. Yes? Please.
It's a very simple thing that happened to me today, and it made me think this is how wars are started. I took my godson and his mother to Chinatown this morning to watch the parade.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, it was
but
nice.
you know what it's like? You kind of found your spot, and we did it last year, and we were like, found our spot, and we wanted to keep our spot. And the little boy, who's my godson, we wanted him to have space to look. And then all of a sudden, these three rather large women came and squeezed us. They came right in front of us, and they squeezed into our space. And immediately, my friend and I just looked at each other, and it was like, this is not appropriate, you know? So in a way, I could see immediately, and both of us could see it. We were really angry with these three women because that's just not the way you're supposed to do it. It's like I had this inner rule of what was allowed and what wasn't allowed in that moment. And our anger, you know, we were like looking at them as if they should understand, and they weren't looking at us and apologizing or seeing anything, and then pushing through and taking their photos. And that was exactly the moment when I was judging those women and feeling that they're just, you know, they don't care about anything. And, you know, it was exactly that moment that and I even said that to my friend. I was like, this is how wars can be started, you know, and actually we need to, but it's a very subtle thing.
Yeah, one person imposes themselves.
Yeah.
So the first thought
Yeah.
should be compassion.
Yeah.
Because they're ignorant.
Yeah.
They're not aware,
Yeah.
you know, of their presence in that way.
Yeah, they're totally
You
unaware.
know? So that's why compassion is so important. Without compassion, I mean, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Even though we are great practitioners and we have all the information in the world
Yeah.
and all the wisdom in the universe, if we're not compassionate,
Yes.
you know, without the real method.
And in a similar way, I wrote down just now the people that we're angry with, those people that voted for Trump, or, you know, and then we think, you know, and we judge them.
Yeah,
And
I
so
understand.
it's a similar. Anyway, that was just my reflection from today.
Yeah. Yes.
Just from what the lady said and some of my own sort of limited experience with working with people and trying to be compassionate, is that there is also something else that goes with compassion, because I can, you know, you can give, but actually how does someone receive? And like if you give in your own level, it's actually not always so helpful for the other person, even if it's real compassion and it's real, like the person feels it, but there are so many walks of life. And I think sometimes with Buddhism it's the same, that you have, you know, people who are Buddhist and label themselves like that, but how are you going to help people to translate the Dharma into something that is more universal and really, you know, do you know what I mean? It's like the skillful means aspect of compassion, where it's not just the compassion has something else that enables you to translate and connect with people on a level where they understand it. Like you were saying about the person who's serving you, or the bus driver, or the person you're serving in a restaurant or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's very interesting. Yeah, of course. I mean, we all can relate to that. Everybody can relate to a smile everywhere in the world. Everybody can relate to a hug everywhere in the world. Maybe some people are more distant, they're more like protective about themselves, they feel more vulnerable maybe. But we can all relate to that. So it's there, it's present at all times. And we really have to make an effort when we wake up in the morning, when we go to sleep at night, to really check ourselves and be aware of this, of the habits and the patterns. Okay? So maybe we'll just wrap it up like that. And hopefully we can meet again soon. Yes. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much for having me here. It really has been a pleasure. And so the merits that we've created today, from the hope and inspiration and desire to help people and the motivation. Let's put all those merits in the bank. Save it well so that if we do some bad things or we fall prey to our negative, destructive emotions, at least those merits stay there. We don't destroy them. So let's really, put that motivation in practice every day and do our, Any umzes around? Anybody wants to do umzes? Otherwise, I'll just do it myself. Okay. Chanjo senjo rimboje mage bana kikyeje kyawa nyamba me bari kone kondo phelwa khone rawe khorwe singande penande amalo jumene chendesion tenzin ge zui shabesi de pardo tengyur chik. Thank you so much. Thank you.